Welcome to chess, ladies and gentlemen. All right, so as you guys know, let me just double check, see where we at the moment. They haven't done it yet. Okay, so we are currently in the second match of 4 games for the knockout round of the Magnus Carlsen Invitational. So we have Wesley versus Alireza Firouzja. And so we have at the moment 1 win and a draw by Wesley. So if he manages to just draw this next game, then he makes it on to the semifinals. So I think it'd be like a Final 4 situation. And so, you know, I appreciate everybody coming and stopping by and taking a look at my video. And of course, as you guys know, I try to speak different languages. I had somebody that told me I shouldn't speak Farsi, but that's kind of what I do. So for anybody out there who is Farsi speaking, Persian speaking, I'll say salam, man kalvinam, and khayli mamnoon. I appreciate you very much for coming and stopping by, taking a look at my video. Assalamu alaikum to you, ma assalama. For all the people out there that are Farsi speaking and happen to be Muslim, which is about 98%, I believe. So, you know, I appreciate it very much, and I'll say shukran. Shukran is thank you in Arabic. So some of you guys might be familiar, but I appreciate you guys coming by. And of course, everybody that's coming from the Philippines, Magandang Umaga, Maraming Salamat Po, Sa Nananood Ing Aking Maga video. Appreciate you guys stopping by and taking a look at my video. Ingat Lagi Mabuhay to you. You guys know I appreciate you guys very much for the support that I've gotten since I've started. It's very much appreciated. But if you guys are ready, we'll go ahead and take a look and see what we have for this game. Bam. Let me get the volume turned up. Always remember, but sometimes I forget. Bam. All right, so we have E4. We got C6. So we have a breakaway from like the Juco pianos and the Sicilians and stuff like that, the Grunfelds. This is one of the few times that I've actually showed the Caro-Kann. So we have D4 and we have D5. As you guys are familiar, you know, a lot of the defenses by black, you know, a majority of the time, probably 80% of the time, you're going to see D4 or E4 as a starting move on the chess game. So black's goal is to try to disrupt this beautiful center as much as possible. So, you know, a lot of times you'll see like a C6 situation. You might see like a Scandinavian. You'll see an E6, which is a very solid type of defense. You know, a lot of these defenses as black are trying to play against this center that white tries to get established. So the Caro-Kann definitely does that. It uses a wing pawn and it tries to make it flexible so the bishop can try to come out. You know, so you don't block it in, because of course, you know, when you have the Frenches and stuff that'll come, you know, this bishop can sometimes be unhappy. I personally play the French. I don't have any problems with it. It's not as hard to work around this bishop. So anyway, like I said, we do have the Caro-Kann. We got D5, and then we have the E5. So we have the advanced Caro-Kann. And so after bishop comes to F5, we see knight to F3, and we see the short variation. As you guys might be familiar with the Grandmaster Nigel Short, pretty famous, you know, rivalry he had with Garry Kasparov. Couldn't quite get him, but he definitely is up there. I think I'll probably put him as my chess legend at some point coming up. But anyway, we have E6. You know, now we pretty much solved the problem of getting this bishop out. So we've gotten it outside the pawn structure, which can be beneficial. So we see bishop to E2. We got knight to E7. We have castles by white. We got H6 by black. You know, we don't want any bishop to G5 stuff coming. You know, it's going to be kind of an annoying pin. You can't really push F6 because, you know, you're just going to be taking it with the pawn. So we got knight B to D2. We got knight to D7. And as you guys that are, you know, that do play the Caro-Kann are pretty familiar with the situation, like, you know, C5 and F6 are the pawn breaks that you want to, you know, try to do. C4 is going to be something that you're going to try to do for white. You know, and because of the fact that, you know, you don't have, you know, because of the fact that you do have the pawn structure very closed, it is not a bad situation. Because, you know, it's not a bad situation that you haven't castled. Because as you guys know, when you guys do have like closed structures and stuff, and it's not open, it's not as dangerous for your king to be in the center of the board. So we do have knight to B3. We got G5 coming. The bishop comes to D2. We have A5 by black. Got A4 by white. You know, we definitely don't want A4 coming, knocking this knight, because we just placed it on a square that we like. So we see queen to C7. We got C3. You know, white is just basically just trying to, like, you know, make this pawn structure as solid as possible. So C3 comes. So we see F6 by black. And this is actually the novelty of the game. It actually gives white quite a bit. It's kind of opening up the king a little bit more than you'd like. Like I said, as long as the position stays closed in certain positions, you know, it's not as dangerous for the king to be in the center. But when you do start to open the game up, that's when you kind of exclaim the fact that, you know, this diagonal is kind of open, you know, and the king is just really just kind of stuck in the center. That's not where we want him to be. So we do see pawn takes F6 and not the immediate knight takes F6, which actually would have been okay. We see knight to G6. It's pretty accurate. It's a pretty accurate way of dealing with it because, I mean, as you guys know, you know, this pawn really isn't going anywhere. There's not really a way for you to protect it. So you don't really have to too much worry about, you know, it just kind of being in your position forever. And so we see, okay, so like we got to a point in the game. If you guys want to go ahead and stop the video and see, I think I kind of gave you the answer a little bit, so you probably will just get it. But if you want to see, you know, what two moves are actually pretty good for white in this position, go ahead and do so real quick. Okay, cool. One of them, like I said, I kind of gave you the answer on it already. But another one, I don't think it's as easy to see, but it's pretty practical. The move that was played in the game was C4. And as I'm always telling you guys, you know, when you do have your opponent has like a really like legitimate pawn center, you know, you want to try to chip away at it somehow. And as you guys see, you don't have an E pawn. So, you know, your break is really going to be C4 as white. So you really want to kind of get that in. Something else that was interesting that maybe you guys might be thinking about in your own games is, you know, when you have this king right here, so the king wants to probably get castled at some point, right? So if we just back up, not play C4, the king wants to get castled. A really, really good way to disrupt that is going to be actually to play F7, because as you're thinking about it, you know, your pawn is going anyway. So, you know, you want to go down swinging. You want to try to cause as much havoc as possible, you know, while you're going to be losing a pawn anyway. So F7 was like a really good thought to actually kind of disrupt the king, you know, because the king would have to move over like this or move down or take here. And it just kind of opened up the king just a little bit. You know, maybe you can artificial castle here in the corner, but, you know, like I always say, I mean, if you're gonna mess around and lose a piece, you might as well go down and take the most material you can, or try to disrupt your king, or try to disrupt the other player as much as possible. But like I said, we did see C4. We got bishop to D6. We got pawn takes D5, pawn takes D5, and as you guys can see, you know, this position is actually starting to look pretty scary for black. You know, we have this file that's completely open. The king has not castled either way. So as you can see, there's going to start coming some attacks here. And the first move of that, which I think is really, really computer-like move, is bishop to D3. And this definitely was something that the computer did suggest. It looks kind of weird because it just looks like you're just giving away the bishop for free. But you do have a, you know, Zwischenzug move, a little in-between move you can throw in there. So the bishop takes on D3. We see the bishop takes on A5. And then we see the rook take on A5. And then we see queen takes D3. And you are having quite a bit of problems here as black. Like you have this knight that's undefended, that's hanging. You have this rook that's about to, you know, lose the exchange. You have these rooks that can start coming into the position. And so now the position is so open that, you know, it is a problem that the king never castled. So when you're playing your own games, if your king has not castled, or if you don't plan on castling, you want to try to keep the position as close as possible to make sure that, you know, these lines aren't open to your king and you're having all these different problems that you're having to deal with and stuff like that. So we do see king come into F7, so it kind of hides the king a little bit. So the knight takes on A5. We see the queen taking on A5. We see queen to F5. And as you can see, like I said, I mean, we're having a lot of issues. I mean, we have like possible knight, you know, after rook to E1. We have some knight E5s coming, you know, getting us another little pass pawn here. So it's not looking the best here for black. The queen comes back to D8 to you know, to protect, because this knight is hanging. You know, we don't want to take here, like I said, because we're going to have a trade here, and that's going to give us a pawn. And we're just going to have a really, really nice connected pass pawns here in the middle of the board. So we see rook A to E1, just making sure we get all of our pieces in play. And so we see knight G to F8. So we see a nice rook sacrifice on E7. You know, as you guys see, you know, black has lost the exchange. So those are times that you start thinking about like giving your own exchange up as well, because you know, it basically at worst would give you equality to your other player. So, you know, Wesley So sitting there thinking, hey man, let me go ahead and just, you know, bust a position open. You know, this is, of course, if it's traded here, the pawn's going to take, queen might take, and then you have, you know, or the king's going to take. And then the king is opened up in the middle of the board. And that's literally exactly what happens. You know, the king is checked. So, you know, you have to do something about that because, you know, of course the king can't go here because that's just going to be checkmate. So we have to trade here. So the bishop takes on e7, pawn takes on e7, and then the king takes e7, and then you see rook to e1. So as you can see, this king is in a really, really tight box. There's not really a whole lot now that he can do. And it's just looking pretty nasty. So the king comes down to d6. We see knight to e5, you know, threatening, you know, the fork here, the family fork of the rook and the queen and the king. So we have to defend against that. The rook comes to h7, but unfortunately, this puts black in a tough spot because you're going to be taken here with the knight, and then how do you take back, right? If you take here, of course, if the knight takes, you're dropping the rook, and now you were just down a complete exchange. You know, if you take with the queen, you're actually just going to be getting checkmated, which is actually what happens in the game. We follow after the knight takes, the queen takes, and then we just see it's basically kind of like a box checkmate. A lot of the times, like when you can put the queen right next to the king, the queen is cutting off this rank or this file. It's cutting off this diagonal, and then this pawn is cutting off this. So it's just kind of, you know, it's just one of those like type of checkmates where it's kind of like, it looks like a box. Like I said, I mean, you got the, you know, these squares covered, and it's just kind of like a square situation. So it's just kind of something you visualize after you start doing it so many times, you know, kind of working on mates in ones, mates in twos, things like that. So that was that game. It was a pretty short game. And I realize now that I probably should have had you guys guess a different move. I think rook to e7 was probably a little bit better to guess on. Because it was kind of counterintuitive to think about. It's not the first thing that comes to mind when you think about, you know, putting a piece forward. You know, I appreciate you guys very much coming by. Mary means Salamat Po, Akeem my guy Kaibagan. And see you guys, it's breakfast time. Well, no, it's not breakfast time. It's like 4 a.m. So anybody that's eating breakfast, Almasal Tayal, you know, Haley Mamnoon for my people that are speaking Farsi. Ma asalama to you. And I will see you guys next time. I appreciate it.